Hi there, this is Ashley back with Lumefinity, and today I am here to show you how to make Little Miss Bad. She's from the Little Miss and Mr. Men book series, and she is completely loomless, so we will be making her with the hook. And I used a technique that they actually use in crochet. It's called, I believe you pronounce it Amigurumi. So we will be creating that, using that style to create her today. In order to create this, you'll need about 65 black bands, approximately 450 of the light or the Rainbow Loom pink. Today, while I create her, I'm actually going to use the Rainbow Loom fuchsia. If you look at pictures of her online, her pink is a little bit darker than this one, so I'm going to go ahead and make her today with the fuchsia. But if you don't have fuchsia or you prefer, you can just make her with the regular Rainbow Loom pink. You will also need one of the ocean blue for her nose and 6 purple for her bows. And then I'll be working with a standard crochet hook. Any size will actually do for this as long as it can grab the bands. But I found that if you use the Rainbow Loom metal hook, the grooves here are so, it's so sharp in this area here that you end up catching on to other bands. So this maneuver is a lot better. If you don't have a crochet hook, you can use your regular Rainbow Loom hook. It might just be a little bit harder to maneuver. And then also, in order to fill her when we are done, I am using regular polyfill that you can purchase at any type of Michaels. They're about, I went there today, in fact, they're $5 for a very large bag, and actually if you go online you can get a 50% off coupon, so it's about $2.50. If you do not have that accessible to you at this time, you could always replace it with cotton balls. If you have cotton balls laying around, maybe, I haven't tried it, but maybe if you took old recycled paper, shredded it up really small, you could use that as a filler. Or if you have old t-shirts, you could maybe ask, you know, if you're obviously younger, ask your parents first, but anyone else, you know, you could take those, cut the rags up, anything that you might want to use as a filler, but I'm going to be using the polyfill. So if you have that, that's great as well, and you really don't need a lot in order to create her. So if you want to go ahead and grab your supplies, then we can go ahead and get started. Okay, in order to get started, we're going to go ahead and grab our hook, and the first thing we will be working with is our black. So we are going to start, now in crochet they do what's called the magic circle, but it's kind of impossible to really do, well, not impossible, but very hard to do the magic circle using just the rubber bands. So we are going to create a magic circle using the bands. I just want to thank Kate Schultz from Islicious Designs. She and I had both discussed the amigurumi. We both had started working on it around the same time on our outside of, you know, looming to try and figure out the best way to convert it. And so she came up with a couple of things that actually helped me prevent the twisting problems that I was having. So I just want to thank her for pointing me in the right direction and giving me a little bit of advice to fix that, so I was able to make these for you. Also, I do know that when I started doing the tutorials in an effort to learn to crochet, to be able to convert it, I am left-handed, and there is not a lot of tutorials for left-handed people. When you are doing standard looming on a loom, it's not all that imperative that the person looming uses the same hand, as long as you can see the placement of the bands. I will tell you, it is sometimes hard to follow along with somebody if you are right-handed and you are not familiar with crochet, to follow me along in left hand. And I do apologize in advance. That's not something that I can help. If you are left-handed, it will be a big advantage to you in doing this tutorial. So just to give you guys a little heads up there, because I did find when I was trying to, you know, do tutorials on regular crochet, it was very difficult for me to follow somebody who was right-handed, and I had to seek out left-handed tutorials specifically so that I could understand the placement of the yarn. So hopefully this will not be too difficult for a right-handed person to follow. The only advice I could give you is maybe if you have a mirror, place the video facing the mirror and then look into the mirror. That might be an option for you to swap the hand placement so that you're actually looking at it from a right-handed perspective. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. We're going to take a single black on our hook and we're just going to create one loop, just like that. We are then going to take another single black and we are going to feed this band onto that single black and reclaim the other side. You are then going to take another single black and we are going to create another chain. So essentially just creating a simple chain on your hook. And this would be chaining one. So if you look at any type of amigurumi configuration and it says to, they usually call it SC1, so stitch one. This would be one stitch using rubber bands. Now we want to go on to the second one, and what we're doing here is creating the magic circle, and we want a magic circle with 10 chains on it. So we're going to go back through. You want to pull out that initial loop that you made that's down here at the bottom. Hopefully you can see that. And we are going back through that hole, placing it back onto the hook. You then want to take another single black, and I'm going to feed only that bottom loop. I'm leaving this one on the hook still, and I'm going to reclaim the other band, and then going to take another single black, and I'm going to pull all 4 of these loops in place. So I've now created 2 chains. So we want to move on and make another chain, so I'm going back through that center loop, taking a single black, and again I'm only feeding that bottom circle through, so I end up with the 4 loops on the top, taking another single band and feeding all 4 through. You can always tell how many you've actually completed if you flip the design up on its end and count your loops. So if you can see this here, this is one loop, this is a loop, and then you have another loop here. So we have chained 3. You do not want to count the one that's already on your hook. So now we want to go in and do the 4th chain. So again, I'm going back through that same bottom loop. I'm going to grab a single black, feeding it only through the bottom, reclaim the other side, grabbing another band and feeding all of them through. And that's number 4, so we're going to do that again. Going back through that loop, bringing one band, creating my 4 loops here, and feeding those all through. And that's number 5. Going back through and just repeating this process. Six, that's 7, that's 8, 9, and this is the last one with number 10. Now, what we want to do is kind of close off this circle. So in order to do that, you're just going to look, you'll see your circle here in the middle. Hopefully you can see this. So there's a circle right here, and you'll see that first initial loop made right here. You can see where it bends around right in that area. I'm going to take my hook and I'm going to feed, we're going from the inside, so whatever the top piece you're holding, I'm going in the top, and I want to go through the 2 bands the two side bands that you'll see here, I'm going to take a single black and pull that through all 4 bands. And essentially what you're doing there is just closing that circle off. And that completes the first round on for the what they consider the magic circle. Now once we have this in place, we can go ahead and begin moving into the next row. And in the next row, if you were looking at a crochet pattern, this would be an SC1 increase 1. What that means is we're going to go feed through and we're going to do a single stitch, and then in the next stitch we're going to increase. So I'm going to show you how to do that. Also, based on the character we're making, this is the row that we're going to be placing the hair. We will be placing that on the 5th stitch and the 10th stitch. So when you are working with these, they do tend to require some type of counting. You could also use little, and if you go into the crochet sections, they have these little tiny hooks. Some people use those in crocheting for placement so that they don't have to do counting. If they especially when they're doing large projects, they have a tendency to lose count. So you could always get those if you would like. And then another option is just to use an offset color band. So in this case we're working with black bands. So what I'm going to do is, in order to show you, first of all, if you're looking for a round, we should have 10 around. So when you flip the design over on its edge, you're looking for these small loops here. Each one of these would be a stitch. So when we start stitching, let me just take, and you want to make sure you're looking at the flat edge and you count. So it should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and the last one here is 10. So when I place my hair extensions on here, I want them on the 5th and the 10th stitch. So counting again, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So when I get to this stitch here, I'm going to want to place the hair. And if I need, as a way to remind myself that I'm going to do this, you could always take a single band and just feed that through, if I can do it myself. I'm going to feed it through those, just through those little holes right there, and leave that, just let it stick through here like this as a reminder that when I get here, this is my 5th stitch and I want to place the hairpiece. If you wanted to do it to the 10th mark, you could put one here as well, but we can always move this. Once we get past here, we'll know, once we place the hairpiece, we'll know that's the 5th stitch and we'll replace it and move it there. Okay, so moving on, as I said, the pattern is a single stitch and then an increased stitch. So to do a single stitch, we are going to take our hook and we want to find that first rounded edge, which when you hold the pattern flat is right here. Okay, so here's my hook right there, and there's my first stitch right here. So I'm going to place my hook going through the top, and I want to go through both of those loops. I think I have twisted bands. If you have twisted bands, sometimes it can be hard to decipher where you're going. So you're hooking through that first stitch. I'm going to take a single black, and this is a single stitch. So I'm going to feed that through and reclaim the other side. I'm then going to take another single black and pull them all through. So that is a single stitch. On the next one, this is where we want to increase. So we just went through here. Now we're going through here, through both of these loops right here. So I'm going to go in through the top, and in order to increase, I'm going to go in creating a single stitch, and instead of moving on to the next loop, I'm going to go back into that same loop and create another single stitch. And this is what when you look at a pattern, it says to increase, this would be what increasing would be. So if it says increase 1, you increase 1. If it says increase 2, you would do a total of 3 in that same loop there. So the pattern again is SC1, increase 1, single stitch 1, increase 1. So we're going to go into this next loop, and this will be a single stitch. I find it easiest when working with these bands. I end up using my middle finger a lot in order to retain some tension here to maneuver. So we did our single stitch, so the next one we want to increase. So we're going to go in through this loop here, and I'm going to go ahead and create my first stitch. And I'm going back in, creating a second stitch in there as well. So we are now on to the 5th stitch, which will be a single stitch, but it's also the one in which we're going to attach the hairpiece. So I'm going to go ahead and remove my magenta band, just get it out of the way. So in order to make the hair, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go into the 5th stitch, go through the loop, and we're going to start the first portion of the stitch. So go ahead and take your band, feed it through. You now have 4 loops, but we don't want to feed anything through yet. We're going to create the hairpiece while this is still on our hook, and then pull it on that way. So what you're going to do is take a single black, and you're going to create 3 loops on your hook. I'm going to take another single and feed that in. I'm going to do that again, feeding another black in place, and one more time. And I'm going to push that down and leave that. I'm going to create another one. So I'm going to take another single black on my hook and create 3 loops, taking a single and feeding that onto those 3 loops, taking another single, and I'm repeating that one more time. Now I want to finish off my stitch. So I'm going to take a single black, I'm going to pull my hair pieces into place, and then I'm going to pull all the way through the stitch and reclaim the other side. Just like that. And your hair pieces want to be underneath your hook at this point. Now we just created our 5th stitch in here, so let's go ahead and count. So this would be 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So this is our last stitch here, and I'm just going to go ahead and feed my magenta band into place so that I know where my next hair piece is going. Just like that. And since we just did the 5th stitch, it was a single stitch, so the next one on our 6th stitch, that's going to be an increase. So we're going to go in, grab a single, and there's my first stitch. I then want to go back into the same hole and do that again, creating a second stitch. On stitch 7, we're just doing a single stitch. And on stitch 8, that's an increase, so I'm going to go ahead and create my first stitch. Going back in and doing a second stitch. Then going in for stitch 9, which is a single stitch. And now we're on to the 10th stitch. Now the 10th stitch is an increase stitch. So I'm going to go ahead and remove my magenta band, and I also want to be able to attach the hair. So since it's an increase, I want to actually attach it in between that increase. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in, and I'm going to pull through and create my first stitch. And then going back in, and I'm going to create the first half of my second stitch, and now I'm going to create the hair again. So I'm going to do the same thing as before, taking a single on my hook, creating my 3 loops, taking another single, feeding that in place, another single, and another single. And then repeating that again, so a single black, 3 loops, another single black, another single, and one more. And I'm now going to complete that second stitch. So I'm going to grab my band, I'm going to pull those hair pieces on, and then I'm going to feed through the remainder of the stitch, grabbing the other side, and my hair pieces again are underneath my hook. And then we're just going to finish off the circle. So if you look again, here is the very first loop coming out of our last stitch right here. I'm just going to go through there, and I'm not doing a stitch, I'm actually doing a slip stitch. So that means I'm just going to go ahead straight through. I just dropped a band. Somehow that band got away from me. And reclaim the other side. And that is now the second row that is completed. Now moving on, we're going to be moving in using our black and our pink and switching over. And this round calls for 2 single stitches. So a single stitch, when you look, you'll be going a single stitch in one, a single stitch in the next one, and then an increase into the third one. And we're going to be doing that pattern all the way around. So it's an SC2, increase 1. Now if it makes it easier, you can mark your increases all the way around. So if you look, this would be the first stitch. So we know this is a single, this is a single, this is an increase. So if I wanted to, I could go through again with my magenta bands. And then just pull that through. So then it's a single stitch, and then this one here would be my increase right here. So I can take another single band and just push that through. And then continuing around, I then have a single stitch, and this one here would be an increase. And then another single, single, so this one here is an increase. Let me do this bead way. Pinch and push. Okay, and then continuing on, you have another single stitch, and then our final one here at the very end is also an increase. So it's up to you whether you want to mark them in advance, or if you are good at counting, you can count. I usually count them, but because of the tutorial, I figured I would show you this technique. Not only that, it's very hard to talk about what I'm doing and keep count in my head. You can use the markers, or some people even will just mark one at a time, so as you get to the stitch, you pull it and move it. So this time we're going to be converting over to our magenta. So we're going to go in through the first stitch, and this is a single stitch. We're going to take a single black and feed that in place. But we're not going to pull another black through. Now we want to grab our pink or our magenta, and I'm going to feed that through to pull the whole thing together. Going into the next one, again, taking a single black, this is a single stitch, and feeding in my magenta. We are now up to our first set of increase on this round, so I'm going to pull my magenta out, and I'm going in through the loop, creating one stitch, and then magenta, going back into the same loop, taking another black for the second stitch. Oh, almost put the black on there. I better bring some magenta over here. And now moving on, our next stitch is a single stitch, then magenta. Next one is a single stitch, next one is an increase, so I'm going to pull my magenta out, going in for the first stitch, and repeating that in the same stitch. And then moving on, our next stitch is a single stitch. And you want to make sure as you're going around the hair that the hair is up above you at this point, or under your hook. You don't want to loom the hair inside the actual project. And our next one again is a single. And then removing our holding place band. Again, the next one is an increase, so go in, creating a single stitch, and then I'm going to repeat that again for the second stitch. Continuing around, next one is a single stitch, going in again for another single stitch on the next one, and then removing my magenta here for an increase. So going in for the first one, repeating that again. And once you practice with this technique a little bit, it really is actually very easy to maneuver. It just takes a little bit of practice. I spent 2 days, a day and a half, just making different stuff, and it actually became easier as I went. And then moving in, we just did an increase, so the next one is a single stitch. Going into the next one for a single stitch. And then removing my magenta for a double stitch or an increased stitch. So going in and creating one. going back in again and creating my second one. And then looking here, you actually have a gap where the colors don't meet, so we want to make them meet. So if you look here closely, you'll have a pink that came off of a loop right here. I want to go through that loop, take a pink, and do a slip stitch. So essentially I'm just going to go straight through all the bands, just like that, to bring it all together. Okay, so now we're going to be moving on to the fourth row, and for that we will be using magenta bands, and on this row we will also be adding in our eyes on the 12th and 14th stitch, and these will be single stitches all the way around. So if you would like to mark that for as far as where your eyes are going to go, we can do that. So if you're looking, and these are going to be a little easier to count since we're working, we just switched over to the magenta so you can see those actual loops. So here, if you look here, you can count. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. That's 12 there. And then 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So we should have 20. So it's the 12th and the 14th. These two stitches here are where we're going to be placing the eyes. So just to mark mine, I'm just going to take a black band and push that through. They're popping off on me. Okay, just like that. Now going all the way around, we're just going to be creating the single stitches. So I'm going to go through my first magenta band here and feed that through. So that's one. Two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine, 10, 11. So our next stitch, we know we want to place the eyes, so I'm going to pull my black band out, and I'm actually going to use that band to create the eyes. So to do that, I'm going to start the stitch by going through the loops. I'm then going to take my black band on my hook and create 4 loops. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. Taking my magenta band, I'm going to pull these 4 bands into place and then pull all the way through and reclaim the other side. And going in and creating my next stitch. And then the next one is the second eye, so I'm going to pull that black out, going in, creating the first part of the loop, taking that black band, creating 4 loops on my hook, taking a single and pulling those into place, and then beading all the way through. We just finished number 14, and there's 20 total. So moving on, number 15. And 16. 17. 18, 19, 20. And then we just want to close off this circle. So if you're looking at your pattern, you see a little bit of a V. And right here you'll see where you started that initial loop. You want to go through here and create a slip stitch. So you're going all the way through. And that closes off round 4. Moving on to round 5, again we're just working with single stitches all the way around, but we want to be able to add the nose. And the nose will be added on the 13th stitch. So it's pretty easy to pinpoint without counting. It's going right between the eyes. So here's your eyes here. The nose would therefore be on this stitch here. If you wanted to count, just pulling back your bands, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. So if you'd like, you can place a holding band there, and since the nose we'll be using for this design is blue, I'm just going to go ahead and stick the blue band through there since that's the one that I'm going to be using. Just like that. And we're going to work our way around again. So going through the first stitch, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and now we're going to be placing the nose, so let's go ahead and remove the blue band. I'm going to go in, creating the first portion of my stitch, and then taking my blue on my hook, creating 4 loops, taking a single magenta, and feeding the 4 loops on, and then coming all the way through those bands. So that's number 13. 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. And then looking again, you'll see your V right here. I'm going to go through this side and do a slip stitch to close off that circle. And you'll look at the face here, a lot of it looks like bands and crossing over and stuff, and once we put the stuffing in, you'll be able to reshape some of that stuff as well. And now we're going to work through the next one. Again is also just single stitches all the way around. On this one though, we will be adding the arms and the 10th and the 20th stitch, so we can go ahead and count that. So I'm looking at my design. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and this is my 10th stitch right here. And even though the arms are going to be magenta, I am going to use black as a marking band. And then once we place this arm, I will then move it over to the other side instead of marking the one right here. So let's just go ahead in and create our first 10 stitches. So going in, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9. And the next one will be placing the arms, so I'm going to go ahead and remove my black band. And in order to do that, we're going to go in, through, and start the stitch. And then on my hook, we'll go ahead and create the hand with this still in place. So I'm taking a single magenta on my hook. I'm going to create 4 loops. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. Taking another single magenta, I'm going to double it and feed those in place. And I'm going to do that again. So single with 4 loops. Take a single and double it. And then go ahead and do that one more time. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. Single, double. I'm then going to take a single band and double it, and I'm going to pull those in place to create her hand. Pinch that together, taking 2 bands and feed that on, 2 more bands and feed that on, and that creates her small little arm. And then we're going to finish the stitch, so taking a single magenta, I'm going to pull the arm in place, feed through the remainder of the stitch, and reclaim the other side. And at this point, the arm should be underneath your hook. I'm now going to count forward to the other side, because on the 20th stitch we want to add the other arm. So this is where we went through. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So this is our 20th stitch here. And so let's just continue looping around with single stitches. So this is number 11. And 12. 13. 14. 15. 16. 17. 18. 19, and I'm going to pull the black out, going through my 20th stitch, taking a single, I'm going to create my 4 loops, taking another single, double it, do that again, so 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to double that over. And one more time, 1, 2, 3, 4. And taking a single, double it, and feed these into place. Taking 2 bands and pull those through, and 2 more. And then taking a single to finish off the stitch. And then looking again, if I pull back, I have my little V. I'm going to go through here and create the slip stitch all the way through to close off the circle. Now on the next row, we're going to start working on decreasing the bottom of the body, and I'll show you how to do that. The first row of the decrease calls for 2 single stitches, so it would be a single stitch, and then we'll be decreasing into the next 2 stitches. So we're going from 20 total around, we should be dropping to 15. And what you can do is you can mark these if that makes it easier. So when you look at these, we'll be doing a single stitch, and decreasing into these 2. So I'll just mark the first one with a black band. Now this one will be part of the decrease, so we're not going to count that second stitch after that one. These 2 would be counted as 1. So then it's another single stitch, and decreasing these. So I'm going to mark this one. And then moving on around, again, I'm not going to count that first stitch after. So single stitch, single, and then decrease. I really should just go pull my little crochet markers. I might have made this a little quicker. And then again, this one would be counted in the decrease. So single, single, decrease. And then that one's part of the decrease. So single, single, and then decrease the remainder 2. Alright, so going in to my first, and this is a single stitch. And the next one also a single stitch. Now the next one is a decrease, and what that means is we were essentially turning these 2 loops into 1 loop. So I'm going to go ahead and remove my marking band. You're going to go in through the first loop, and we're going to complete the first half of a stitch. But instead of feeding a band through, I'm going to go into the next stitch and feed another band through that single stitch. Now I'm going to take 1 band and feed that through all 6, just like that. So I decreased 2 stitches into 1. Now moving forward, the next one calls for a single stitch. Another single stitch into the next one. think I just went through the same one twice. Yep, that's what I did. Okay, let me just get caught up with where you are. Okay, so single stitch. And that's why the markers come in handy too. If you are supposed to be doing 2 single stitches and you get there and it's all of a sudden you need 3, then you know you might have accidentally doubled up somewhere. Okay, now we're moving into another decrease, so I'm going to remove the marker band, going in through the decrease marker loop. And I'm going to create the first part of a stitch, going into the next one, and creating the first half of that stitch, and then feeding 1 band all the way through. Moving on, this one's a single stitch. Next one is also a single stitch. Removing my placement band, going in, creating the first half of this stitch, going into the next one, creating the first half of that one, and then feeding 1 band through all 6 bands. Next one is a single stitch. And again, another single stitch. And then removing my next band, going in, creating the half of that first stitch, and going into the next one, and half of that stitch, and feeding through them all. And then repeating that again, so another single stitch. And another one. And then removing the marking band for the last 2, which is a decrease. So half a stitch, half of another stitch, feeding all the way through. And then looking for my V right here, I'm going to go through and create a slip stitch. The next row is going to call to single stitch 1 and decrease 1. We also need to be able to attach the feet on the 7th and the 14th stitch. So essentially it's every other one. So what I'm going to do at this point is I'm actually just going to mark the 7th and 14th stitch instead of marking every one that I'm going to decrease. It'll make it easier to count as we go. So the 7th stitch is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So we've got 1 going here. And I'll move that once we get around because the 14th stitch is right over here. So the way this is going to go is we're going to single stitch 1 and then decrease the next 2. So I'm going to go in, create my single stitch. This is 1. For number 2, I'm going to go in for half and go into 3. and then feed one band through. The fourth one is a single stitch. And then going into 5 for a half and 6 for a half, and then feed one band all the way through. Now I'm going to remove this to create the feet, which is also a single stitch. To do that, I'm going to go in and create the first half of the stitch. Then to create the foot, I'm just going to take a single band on my hook and create 3 loops. I'm then going to take 3 magenta bands, and I'm going to feed that triple loop in place and reclaim the other side and just even that out a little. I'm then taking 2 magenta bands and I'm going to double them over and pull that in place. I'm taking 2 magenta bands and feeding those in place, and 2 more magenta bands and feeding these in place. And now I can finish the stitch by pulling the foot on and feeding through the remainder of that stitch. And again, just like our other parts, the foot should be on the bottom. Now I'm going to count forward, so this would be 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So I'm going to mark this here because this is where my next foot is going to go. So that was a single stitch that we placed, so let's go in and do a decrease. So this is 8, going again to 9, and moving on to 10, which is a single stitch. And then 11 is a decrease, so 11 and going back in for 12. Thirteen is a single stitch. Now removing this, this is where our next leg is going to go, but it's also a decrease stitch. So I'm going to go in and create the first part of that stitch, and I'm going to go ahead and create my next foot. So creating 3 loops, 1, 2, 3. I'm going to take 3 magenta bands, and feed that in place. Taking 2 magenta bands, I'm going to double them over and feed that in place as well. And taking 2 magenta bands and feeding that on, and then 2 more. Now I'm going to finish the remainder of the decreased stitch. So I'm going to go into number 15 and create the loop, and then I'm going to go ahead and feed that single band onto all of this. And again, your foot should be underneath your hook. Looking at your design again, you're looking for your V right there, so I'm going to go in and create a slip stitch. Now before I go any further, I do want to go ahead and place her stuffing because we're going to go ahead and close her off. So to do that, like I said, I'm just using standard polyfill. And I'm going to push this down on my hook so I don't lose it. And I'm just going to open this up, and you want to take it and then just kind of stuff everything down in there. Just don't lose her feet, because they tend to go in there with her, with the stuffing. And you just, when you think that she's full, she's probably not. So you just need to keep pushing down some to give her that rounded effect. And then grab some more. I'm going to push up under these edges. That's the one thing when I first started doing the crocheting, a lot of my animals weren't very, they didn't feel full to me. Because I would stuff the polyfill until the space was, but I wasn't like actually stuffing it down in there. So as soon as everything was closed up, you know, the polyfill would settle and shift, and next thing you know, my poor sad monkey or whatever I was making was sadly deflated and not as pretty as the picture. Okay, that looks pretty good. Okay, now that she has her stuffing in, we're going to go ahead and work on closing her up. And in order to do this, all we're going to do at this point is essentially decrease every single stitch. So when you look at it, right here, I'm going to go in and pull one through. I'm going to go in, pull one through, and then feed that closed. Moving on to the next one. I'm going to do that again. And going through here. And she looks pretty good at the bottom. So now all I'm going to do is go straight across her body to the other side. I'm going to grab one of the loops over here. I'm going to take a single magenta. I'm going to feed a slip stitch straight through. And then we want to tie it off with a slip knot and pull till it's tight. And then we want to hide this up in her body. So to do that, you're just going to stick your hook anywhere through the back of the body into the stuffing, come out through the bottom, grab that band, and pull it back up into the body. And that will hide the slip knot at the bottom of her body. And at this point, if you need to, you can kind of do some shifting with her bands so that you can even out the placement of her arms in case she got a little twisty during the stuffing process, which can happen. We'll fix her eyes up a little. Now we can place her bows, and in order to create those, you can use the loom if you want to grab your loom to do this, but I found a way to do it with my fingers. So what I did was you're going to take two purple bands and you're going to stick your fingers in the middle, just like this. Then I'm going to take another purple band and I'm just going to stick this right through the back of my fingers and pinch it closed so that's part of it's kind of sticking up and one sticking to the bottom. I'm going to take my hook through the bottom down here, and I'm going to grab onto the bottom part of that purple band. I'm going to pull it up and over And now I want to go in between my fingers and grab the other side of the band. So now I'm hooked around. Then I'm going to twist and come through the center to create a slip knot and pull tight. That's all you're going to do to create her bow. Once you come off your fingers, if it twists a little, just kind of twist the band to straighten it back out. Now I'm going to make a second one. So again, taking my two bands in between my two fingers, taking my other purple, going in and behind, and then holding that band in place, going under, sticking my hook through, coming up and over, and grabbing the top. Now I'm just going to bring it through and create my slip knot. We are then going to take these and we're going to tie them to each of her pigtails. So to do that, you're just going to grab these, take this longer end, and I want the bows to be on top, kind of facing towards the front. So I'm going to place those where I want them. So I want them right there. Now I'm going to take the back and then just keep twisting around, kind of like a hair tie. Just like that to create her bow. I'm going to do the same thing over here. Okay. Now on this one, I created the smile, so I'll show you how to do that. It's up to you. If you find a different way to do it, you can do it differently, but I did the smile, and then a lot of the poses, because she's Little Miss Bad, she kind of has her hands covering her mouth, so I'll show you how to do that next if you want to make it exactly like this. To do that, you're going to grab a couple of your black bands. We're going to take them, and you want to create knots so we end up with one long band. So what you're going to do is take this band and you're laying it on top of this band. Okay? And I know this is going to be really hard to show you how to do. You're then going to take this one and fold it over the other band. Okay? Push the top through the other band and twist it underneath. So you end up with a small knot, and we're going to pull tight. Just like that. And we want to do this again. So I'm going to take this side. Again, I'm going to lay this band over top and fold it over, bringing it underneath and creating another knot. Now we need to hook these straight across her face. It's going to be really loose in the middle, but we need to do the hooking. So the easiest way to do this is to find two center points. Your best bet is to look at the nose right here. You have two bands right here, two right here, and then two right here. So I want to use the third bands out from the nose because Little Miss Bad has a very wide smile. So here's 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to push my hook underneath these bands. I'm going to grab this end and bring it through. And I then want to create a slip knot, but I can't go through this top band because of these bands here. So you want to make sure you're feeding it through itself down here at the bottom. So I'm going to pull this side over and through. Just like that. Now I can't very well slip knot a band that's tied off, so on this side I'm going to turn her around. I'm going to count again. So you got 1, 2, and 3. What I want to do now is I want to stick my hook. I'm going to go through the back of her body somewhere. I'm going to find that band there. I then want to grab onto a single black band. Actually, you don't need to go through the back. 1, 2, 3. Feed your hook through the top. Just like this. So now we've hooked around there. I'm going to take this part off here. I'm going to grab this band and reclaim that band there. Now I want to create my slip knot around that band and pull tight. Now I'm going to take my hook through the back of her body, grabbing that slip knot band, and I want to pull it just back into the body somewhere. Doesn't matter where, just as long as it's pulled back out of the face. Now we're going to take another black band. I'm going to come down to where the base of the smile should be. For her, like I said, she's got a pretty wide smile, so down here at the base, I'm going to go into the bands again and repeat what I did on this side. So I'm going to take a single black and pull it through, leaving one side open. I want to grab these bands and then grab the other side and rehook it. And I'm then going to create a slip knot over that and then pull the two bands from the smile through and pull this tight. I'm then going to go through the back of her body, grabbing that black band and pulling it through to hide it inside. And then we need to bring this corner down and this corner down like this. So now I'm going to go over here somewhere. I want to go in and I'm going to grab this band and pull it through. Actually, I'm going to do it the same way. My center band got a little twisted when we tied it off. I hope yours didn't, because mine didn't on my last one. Okay, so I'm going to go down here and hook through the bands again, keeping this part of the band with me. I'm going to feed this through. And now I'm going to create another slip knot. Again, I want to take my hook somewhere in the back of her body, grabbing that band and pulling it into the body to hide it. I think I stretched these a little too much. It should be alright though once we place her hands. Okay, and then taking another single black, same thing, I'm going to go down here, making sure that this band is on top, pulling a black one through and making a slip knot. I'm going to go through the back of the body and grab that band as well. I'm just try to adjust her smile some, pull those down. Okay, now the last thing we want to do is secure her hands. So in order to do that, I'm going to go through the palm of her hand, through the top. She has the circle where we created the knot on her hand. I'm just going to go straight through there. I want to grab a band and bring it through, and you can go through this top side of her hand. Again, I'm creating a slip knot. I'm going to pull her hand into place because she has her hands right up against her mouth like this, and I'm going to go in underneath some bands here. I'm going to grab the band, pull it through, so it's under there. I am then going to take this band and just kind of hook it up around the hand, the palm of the hand right here, so it blends in with the design. I want to do the same thing on the other side. So I'm going to go through this top part of her hand, the part that's actually going to touch her face. I'm going to pull this through and create a slip knot. And then I'm going to put her hand up here. Feed the band through. Just like that. And like I said, you'll just have to adjust and tweak, and if your mouth band got a little twisted, you might need to, make some adjustments there. The nice thing about Amigurumi is sometimes it can be a pretty forgiving creation because you can pull things to the inside of the body. If you have a loose band over here, for some reason it got stretched out, you can go into the stuffing, pulling those things through the body, and they hide down underneath, which is very hard to do on a standard looming character. So for her feet, you just slip her over. Same technique as most of the regular dolls. You go in through this double band and pull, and that will create the feet going the right way. As you can see, like this one here, her foot is the wrong way. So I'm going to go in and pull so her feet are actually facing forward. But that is how you create Little Miss Bad from the Little Miss and Mr. Men series. I also have Mr. Bump created, and I am almost done with the Little Miss twins. I actually have one of them done. I do need to make both of them, but I can show you what she looks like. As you can see here, this is one, so you're getting a sneak peek here. I haven't even posted these on Instagram or on my Lumefinity page yet. But this is Little Miss Twin. That's one of them, because there's two of them. They're identical. You can see the difference in the size here. They are smaller. But this is Little Miss, one of the Little Miss twins. So that is going to be coming up after Mr. Bump. And hopefully I will have her done, the other one of her done tomorrow, and I can get some pictures up for you. I do hope that you enjoyed the tutorial, and I hope you were able to follow along. Don't forget to subscribe for updates on my future tutorials, and I can't wait to see pictures. I hope to see some posted on Lumefinity page or in some of the groups out there, just to see how they come out for you guys as well. Hope you guys like her.